The silver ship appeared without warning in Earth's outer atmosphere, its surface gleaming like liquid mercury against the black void of space. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the orbital defense station, watching the alien vessel through the massive viewing screen as it hung motionless 300 kilometers away. The ship was beautiful in a way that human technology could never match, all flowing curves and elegant lines that seemed to bend light around its hull. "Sir, they're responding to our hail," said Communications Officer Lisa Chang, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface. "The translation matrix is working, but their language is unlike anything we've encountered." Jake nodded grimly. First contact protocols had been drilled into every Earth Defense Force officer for decades, but no amount of training could prepare someone for the real thing. "Put them through." The viewing screen flickered, and suddenly Jake found himself staring at the most graceful being he had ever seen. The alien was tall and slender, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the soft light of their ship's bridge. Its limbs were impossibly long and thin, moving with a fluid elegance that reminded Jake of underwater ballet. When it spoke, its voice was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "I am Commander Veltar of the Zephyrian Empire," the alien said, its words flowing through the translator with an almost musical quality. "We have observed your primitive world from afar and decided you may be worthy of our attention." Jake felt his jaw tighten at the word primitive, but he kept his voice steady. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. Welcome to our solar system, Commander. We're honored by your visit and hope this can be the beginning of peaceful relations between our peoples." Veltar's head tilted in what might have been amusement. Behind him, Jake could see other Zephyrians moving about their bridge with that same impossible grace, their feet barely seeming to touch the floor as they glided from station to station. Everything about them spoke of refined elegance and advanced civilization. "Peaceful relations," Veltar repeated, as if tasting the words. "How quaint. We have studied your species from a distance, Captain Morrison. Your technology is crude and inefficient, your cities sprawling masses of unnecessary bulk, your vehicles grotesquely over-engineered for simple transportation needs." Dr. Lisa Chang, who had joined Jake on the bridge as Earth's lead xenobiologist, stepped forward. "Commander Veltar, we understand that our civilizations may have developed differently, but we believe there's much we could learn from each other. Perhaps you would consider a cultural exchange program." The alien's large, luminous eyes fixed on Dr. Chang with what appeared to be mild interest. "You are their scientist, yes. We detected elevated neural activity from your cranial region when you spoke. Interesting that such a heavy-bodied species could develop rudimentary intelligence." Jake saw Dr. Chang's hands clench into fists, but her voice remained professional. "We would be happy to demonstrate our achievements if you're interested in learning more about humanity." "Learning," Veltar said with that same musical laugh. "What could we possibly learn from beings who require such massive, clumsy constructions just to leave their planetary surface?" "We observed your launch vehicles, Captain Morrison. They are monuments to waste and inefficiency, burning enormous amounts of chemical fuel to achieve what our ships accomplish with a fraction of the energy." Behind Veltar, another Zephyrian drifted into view. This one was even more ethereal than the commander, its movement so fluid it seemed to be swimming through air rather than walking. "Commander," it said in the same wind chime voice, "their orbital station appears to be constructed entirely of heavy metals and dense composites. The structural engineering is remarkably primitive, relying on crude physical support rather than elegant field manipulation." "Indeed, Science Officer Krieth," Veltar replied without taking his eyes off Jake. "Everything about this species speaks of a fundamental lack of sophistication. Look at their bodies, Captain Morrison. So dense, so heavy, so bound to physical limitations. On our world, we have evolved beyond such crude constraints." Jake watched as Krieth moved across the background of the transmission, noting how the alien seemed to float rather than walk. There was something mesmerizing about the way the Zephyrians moved, as if they were only loosely connected to the physical world around them. "Your ship is certainly beautiful," Dr. Chang said diplomatically. "We'd be very interested in understanding your propulsion technology and field manipulation systems." "I'm sure you would," Veltar said, his tone suggesting that explaining such concepts to humans would be like teaching mathematics to insects. "But first, we are curious about these heavy world creatures ourselves. Our cultural analyst believes studying your species might provide insights into how intelligence can emerge, even under the most limiting physical conditions." A third Zephyrian appeared on screen, this one slightly shorter than the others but moving with the same impossible grace. "I am Morden," it said. "I study primitive civilizations throughout the galaxy. Your species presents a fascinating case study in how consciousness can develop, despite severe gravitational constraints." Jake felt his temper rising again, but Dr. Chang placed a gentle hand on his arm. "We would welcome the opportunity to host you aboard our station, or even on Earth's surface if you're interested in a more comprehensive cultural exchange." Veltar's head tilted again, and Jake caught what might have been surprise in those luminous eyes. "You would invite us to your heavy world surface. How interesting. We had not considered that such a visit might be possible, given the extreme conditions." "Extreme conditions," Jake repeated. "Commander, with respect, Earth is our home. These are normal conditions for us." "Normal," Krieth said as if the word was foreign. "Your definition of normal is what we would consider a crushing death trap. The gravitational field strength of your world would flatten our cities and snap our finest architecture like dried leaves. Yet you live there," Morden added with apparent fascination. "Your bodies have somehow adapted to function under forces that would destroy our most advanced materials." "Remarkable in a crude sort of way." Dr. Chang leaned forward slightly. "Perhaps that's exactly why a cultural exchange would be beneficial. We could learn from your advanced field technologies, and you might gain insights into engineering and biological adaptation under high-stress conditions." Veltar was quiet for a long moment, his ethereal form seeming to shimmer in the soft light of his ship's bridge. Behind him, other Zephyrians continued their graceful dance through the air, their movements so fluid they seemed more like thoughts made manifest than physical beings. "Very well," the commander said finally. "We will consider this cultural exchange. But understand, Captain Morrison, that we view this as an opportunity to study specimens of heavy world evolution, not as a meeting between equals. Your species may have achieved a rudimentary form of civilization, but you remain bound by the crude physical limitations that we transcended long ago." Jake nodded stiffly. "We understand your position, Commander. We look forward to proving that humanity has more to offer than you might expect." As the transmission ended and the viewing screen returned to its image of the silver ship hanging in space, Dr. Chang turned to Jake with a thoughtful expression. "They have no idea," she said quietly. "No idea about what?" Jake asked. "About what it takes to build a civilization under Earth's gravity. They think we're primitive, but they've never had to engineer anything that could withstand the forces we deal with every single day." Jake looked out at the Zephyrian ship, so elegant and beautiful in the weightless void of space, and found himself wondering how well that delicate beauty would fare under the crushing pull of Earth's gravity well. 3 days after first contact, the Zephyrian shuttle approached Earth's orbital station with the same flowing grace as their mothership. Lieutenant Ben Carter watched through the docking bay's reinforced windows as the alien craft maneuvered into position, its movements so smooth they seemed to defy physics. Unlike human vessels that relied on powerful thrusters and careful calculations, the Zephyrian shuttle simply glided through space as if it were swimming through water. "Docking sequence initiated," announced the station's computer system. "Atmospheric pressure equalized. Gravitational field set to Earth standard." Ben adjusted his dress uniform one final time and took his position at the airlock. As Earth's designated escort officer, he had spent the last 3 days studying everything available about Zephyrian culture and biology. The briefings painted a picture of beings so advanced that they had evolved beyond most physical limitations, creatures who viewed the universe through the lens of pure elegance and efficiency. The airlock hissed open, and Ben got his first close look at the aliens. Commander Veltar emerged first, his tall form moving with that same impossible fluidity Ben had observed during the video transmissions. The alien's pale blue skin seemed to shimmer under the station's lights, and his movements were so graceful that he appeared to be dancing rather than walking. Behind him came Science Officer Krieth and Cultural Analyst Morden, both equally ethereal in their bearing. "Welcome aboard Orbital Station Alpha," Ben said, offering the formal greeting he had rehearsed. "I'm Lieutenant Ben Carter, and I'll be your guide during your visit." Veltar's luminous eyes fixed on Ben with what seemed like mild curiosity. "Lieutenant Carter, your species designation interests us. We have observed that humans organize themselves into rigid hierarchical structures, much like primitive herd animals." Ben felt his smile tighten, but he maintained his professional demeanor. Our command structure helps us coordinate complex operations effectively. If you'll follow me, I'd like to show you some of the station's key facilities. As they walked through the main corridor, Ben noticed how the aliens moved. Their feet barely seemed to touch the deck plates, and they glided forward with an economy of motion that made human walking seem clumsy by comparison. Kreath paused occasionally to examine various structural elements, running what appeared to be a scanning device over support beams and junction points. "Your construction methods are quite fascinating," Kreath said, his wind chime voice carrying a note of academic interest. "These support structures appear to be designed for loads far exceeding what should be necessary in a zero-gravity environment. The engineering is primitive but robust in the extreme. We built the station to handle a variety of operational stresses," Ben explained. "Emergency maneuvers, equipment failures, potential combat situations." Morden drifted closer, his movements so fluid it was hypnotic to watch. "Combat situations. Yes, we have studied your species' unfortunate tendency toward violence. Tell us, Lieutenant, why do your people build everything as if expecting it to be destroyed?" Ben paused at that question, considering how to answer. "I suppose we've learned to prepare for the unexpected. Our history has taught us that things break, and when they do, people depend on backup systems and sturdy construction." "How crude," Veltar observed, gliding past a massive blast door that could seal off entire sections of the station. "On our worlds, we have evolved beyond such primitive concerns. Our cities are built from crystallized light and stabilized energy fields. When something is no longer needed, we simply dissolve it back into component frequencies." They entered the station's main engineering section, where engineer Katie Walsh was running diagnostics on the primary power systems. Ben had briefed her on the visit, but he could see her trying to hide her amazement as the three aliens flowed into the room like graceful ghosts. "Katie, I'd like you to meet our guests," Ben said. "This is Commander Veltar, Science Officer Kreath, and Cultural Analyst Morden of the Zephyrian Empire." Katie wiped her hands on her coveralls and extended one toward Veltar, then quickly pulled it back when she realized the alien might not understand human greeting customs. "Welcome to the station. Would you like to see how our power systems work?" Kreath immediately began scanning the massive fusion reactors with obvious interest. "Fascinating. You actually burn matter to create energy. The process is incredibly wasteful, but the power output is remarkable for such a primitive approach." "Wasteful?" Katie asked, a slight edge creeping into her voice. "Indeed," Kreath continued, apparently oblivious to her tone. "Our energy systems draw power directly from quantum fluctuations in space-time. No fuel required, no massive containment systems, no crude magnetic bottles to prevent catastrophic failure." Katie gestured toward the reactor housing, her pride in the engineering evident despite the aliens' dismissive comments. "These reactors can power the entire station for 50 years without refueling. The magnetic containment system can withstand direct plasma containment even if 3 of the 4 backup systems fail simultaneously." Veltar tilted his head in that gesture Ben was beginning to recognize as mild amusement. "You design your systems to survive multiple failures. How paranoid your species must be to assume that everything will break." "Not paranoid," Katie replied firmly. "Practical. When people's lives depend on your work, you make sure it won't fail." Morden drifted closer to examine a control panel, his scanning device emitting soft, harmonic tones. "These control interfaces are remarkably solid. The materials could withstand significant physical trauma. Do your operators frequently damage their equipment?" Katie exchanged a glance with Ben. "Our interfaces are built to handle normal wear and tear. Space is a harsh environment and equipment needs to be durable." "Harsh," Kreath repeated the word as if it were foreign. "We suppose that species evolving in high-gravity environments would view the universe as fundamentally hostile. On our homeworld, the environmental forces are so gentle that our architecture requires no structural support beyond aesthetic preference." Ben led them to the observation deck, where Earth hung in the viewing port like a blue and white jewel against the darkness. The aliens moved to the reinforced windows with their characteristic flowing grace, and Ben noticed they seemed to have no trouble with the station's artificial gravity, which was set to Earth normal. "Your homeworld," Veltar said, studying the planet below. "Even from this distance, we can detect the massive gravitational field it generates. The energy required to escape such a deep gravity well must be enormous." "Our launch systems are designed to handle it," Ben replied. It takes significant thrust, but we've been doing it for decades. Significant thrust, Morden mused. We observed your launch vehicles during our initial survey. The fuel requirements alone must represent a substantial portion of your planetary resources. Such waste would be unthinkable on a civilized world. Katie joined them at the viewing port, and Ben could see her struggling to remain diplomatic. Those wasteful systems have carried millions of people into space safely. Our safety record speaks for itself. Safety record, Krieth said with what sounded like surprise. You actually track failures and injuries. How morbid. On our world, such concerns are purely theoretical. Must be nice, Katie muttered under her breath. Veltar turned from the viewing port, his ethereal form seeming to shimmer in the Earth's reflected light. This cultural exchange has been educational, Lieutenant Carter. Your species' approach to technology is certainly unique. Everything built as if it must survive a war. Every system designed to function under extreme stress. Every piece of equipment constructed with the assumption that lesser components will fail. Ben nodded. We've learned that planning for the worst case usually works out better than hoping for the best case. How pessimistic, Morden observed. We find it remarkable that a species with such a negative worldview could achieve even rudimentary spaceflight. Perhaps, Veltar added, this is why your development has been so slow. You waste enormous resources building things far stronger than necessary, when you could achieve the same results with elegant efficiency. As the aliens glided back toward their shuttle, Ben found himself watching their movements with new eyes. Everything about them spoke of a world without harsh realities, without the constant pressure that had shaped human engineering and human thinking. They moved like beings who had never had to worry about things breaking, never had to build for survival, never had to expect that the universe might try to kill them. Standing at the observation deck, watching Earth turn slowly below, Ben began to understand something the aliens clearly didn't. Every piece of human technology, every robust system, every over-engineered solution had been forged by the crushing reality of living at the bottom of a gravity well that would flatten the delicate beauty of Zephyrian civilization like paper in a hydraulic press. The shuttle bay aboard the orbital station hummed with activity as Dr. Lisa Chang supervised the final preparations for the Zephyrian delegation's descent to Earth. The aliens had agreed to visit the planet's surface after 3 days of careful negotiation and extensive safety briefings. Their curiosity about human heavy world adaptations had apparently overcome their initial reluctance to expose themselves to what they considered extremely dangerous conditions. Commander, Veltar stood near the modified transport shuttle, his tall form swaying slightly as he examined the bulky environmental suits that human engineers had hastily adapted for Zephyrian physiology. The suits looked crude compared to the flowing elegance of normal Zephyrian attire. All heavy plating and mechanical joints designed to support and protect beings who had never needed such protection before. These containment devices are remarkably primitive, Krieth observed, running his scanning instrument over the suit's exoskeleton framework. The power requirements alone must be enormous just to move these mechanical appendages. Captain Jake Morrison emerged from the shuttle's cockpit, checking readings on a tablet computer. The suits are equipped with gravity dampeners and structural support systems. They'll reduce the effective gravitational force you experience by about 40% and provide mechanical assistance for movement. Morden drifted closer, his luminous eyes fixed on the heavy boots attached to each suit. 40% reduction. This means we will still experience more than half of your world's crushing gravitational field. The suits can only do so much, Dr. Chang explained. But we've tested them extensively. You should be able to move and function normally, though it may feel different from what you're used to. Veltar's head tilted in that gesture they had all come to recognize. Different. Yes, we suppose that beings who evolved under such extreme conditions would consider this normal. Tell us, Dr. Chang, do all humans experience this crushing force from birth? Every human who has ever lived, she replied. From the moment we're born until the day we die, Earth's gravity is constantly pulling on every cell in our bodies. Remarkable, Krieth said, though his tone suggested he found it remarkable in the way one might find a particularly interesting disease remarkable. Your skeletal structure must be incredibly dense to avoid complete collapse under such stress. The shuttle's pilot, Lieutenant Danny Foster, called from the cockpit. We're ready for departure when you are. I've programmed a gradual descent profile that will slowly increase gravity from station normal to Earth surface levels over the course of 30 minutes. Veltar nodded to his companions, and they began the process of entering their environmental suits. The process was awkward and clearly unfamiliar to beings accustomed to flowing robes and unencumbered movement. Each suit required multiple technicians to help seal the joints and activate the support systems. The gravitational dampeners are online, announced Chief Engineer Kate Walsh over the communication system. All suit systems showing green. Power cells at full charge. As the shuttle detached from the station and began its slow descent toward Earth, the aliens remained clustered near the viewing ports, watching the planet grow larger below them. Dr. Chang noticed that they moved normally at first, their characteristic fluid grace unchanged by the gentle acceleration of the shuttle's engines. The descent profile shows we're at 1.05 Earth gravity, Lieutenant Foster announced. How are our passengers feeling? Veltar turned from the viewing port, and Dr. Chang caught something new in his expression. The ethereal confidence was still there, but underneath it was the faintest suggestion of uncertainty. We detect increased pressure on our lower extremities. The sensation is unfamiliar but not unpleasant. Krieth was scanning himself with his instrument, watching the readings with scientific interest. Fascinating. Our cellular structure is already beginning to compress under the additional force. The suit's mechanical systems are compensating, but we can feel the difference. As they descended further, the change became more obvious. The aliens' movements, once flowing and graceful, began to take on a more deliberate quality. They no longer glided across the shuttle's deck but walked with increasingly careful steps, their mechanical suits whirring softly as servos assisted their movements. 1.1 Earth gravity, Foster announced, entering the outer atmosphere now. Morden attempted his characteristic floating motion and stumbled slightly, saved from falling only by his suit's automatic balance systems. The force is becoming quite noticeable. We begin to understand why your species moves in such a ponderous manner. Dr. Chang bit back her first response and kept her voice neutral. At full Earth gravity, you'll experience forces roughly 3 times stronger than your homeworld. The suits should make it manageable. 3 times, Veltar repeated, his voice carrying a note of what might have been apprehension. We had calculated the difference, but experiencing it directly provides new perspective on your species' physical limitations. The shuttle shuddered slightly as it entered Earth's atmosphere, and all 3 aliens gripped support handles with movements that had lost their earlier fluid grace. Their environmental suits were working harder now, servos humming constantly to assist movements that had once been effortless. 1.25 Earth gravity, Foster called. Everything looking good up here. Krieth's scanning device slipped from his grip and clattered to the shuttle floor with a sound that would have been impossible in the low gravity of his homeworld. He stared at the fallen instrument for a moment, as if surprised by the simple act of dropping something. Your equipment seems heavier than expected, Dr. Chang observed. Everything seems heavier than expected, Krieth replied, bending carefully to retrieve his scanner. The motion was clumsy compared to his earlier grace, requiring obvious effort despite the suit's assistance. Morden was studying his own hands, watching how they moved differently under the increasing gravitational pull. We are beginning to comprehend the enormous muscular development required for your species to function in this environment. Every movement must be a conscious act of strength. 1.4 Earth gravity, Foster announced, beginning final approach to Colorado Springs facility. The aliens were no longer moving with anything resembling their earlier elegance. Each step was deliberate and careful, their suits working constantly to provide support and assistance. Veltar gripped a support rail with both hands as the shuttle maneuvered for landing, his knuckles actually visible through his pale blue skin. The sensation is quite overwhelming, he admitted, his musical voice carrying new tones of strain. We had not anticipated that the experience would be so physically demanding. Dr. Chang watched as the 3 beings who had dismissed human technology as crude and wasteful now depended entirely on that same technology to function. Their environmental suits, which they had criticized as primitive just hours earlier, were the only things preventing them from being crushed by forces that every human baby learned to navigate within months of birth. Full Earth gravity, Foster announced as the shuttle touched down. Welcome to Colorado Springs. Through the viewing port, they could see human ground crew moving around the landing pad with easy confidence, unencumbered by bulky environmental suits or mechanical assistance. The humans walked normally under the same gravitational force that had the highly advanced aliens clinging to support rails and struggling with basic movement. Veltar stared out at the humans working around their shuttle, and Dr. Chang saw something new in his luminous eyes. For the first time since first contact, the Zephyrian commander was looking at humans not as primitive specimens, but as beings who routinely accomplished what his own advanced physiology found nearly impossible. "Dr. Chang," he said slowly, his voice strained by the effort of simply standing upright, "we believe we may have underestimated certain aspects of human development." As the shuttle's engines wound down and the ground crew prepared to open the hatch, Dr. Chang smiled. The aliens were about to meet Sergeant Amy Rodriguez and her training unit, and she had a feeling that the Zephyrians' education about human capabilities was just beginning. Outside the shuttle, she could see Amy directing her soldiers through routine exercises under the same crushing gravitational force that had these advanced aliens struggling just to remain standing. The shuttle hatch opened with a mechanical hiss, and Earth's unfiltered gravity hit the Zephyrian delegation like a physical blow. Commander Veltar stepped carefully onto the landing platform, his environmental suit's servos whining in protest as they fought to keep him upright under the crushing force that humans called normal. Sergeant Amy Rodriguez stood at attention near the platform's edge, her muscular frame relaxed and confident, despite carrying full combat gear that would have weighed more than an entire Zephyrian family. Behind her, a squad of soldiers performed routine maintenance on vehicles and equipment, their movements casual and efficient under conditions that had the aliens struggling just to walk. "Welcome to Earth, Commander," Amy said with a crisp salute. "I'm Sergeant Rodriguez. I'll be demonstrating some of our standard training procedures today." Veltar attempted to return the gesture, but nearly lost his balance in the process. His suit's stabilization systems engaged with a series of mechanical whirs, keeping him from toppling over. "Sergeant Rodriguez, your species' ability to function under these conditions is more remarkable than we initially calculated." Dr. Chang emerged from the shuttle behind the aliens, moving with the easy confidence of someone born under Earth's gravity. She watched as Krieth attempted to use his scanning device, the instrument trembling in his grip as he fought against forces his body had never been designed to handle. "The gravitational stress is affecting our equipment," Krieth reported, his wind chime voice now tight with strain. "These readings suggest that the structural integrity of our scanning matrix is beginning to deteriorate." Morden tried to move closer to examine a nearby human vehicle, but stumbled after just 3 steps. His environmental suit caught him, mechanical arms extending to provide additional support. "The effort required for basic locomotion is extraordinary. How do your people perform complex tasks under such oppressive conditions?" Amy gestured toward her training squad, who were currently lifting and moving equipment that outweighed them significantly. "Complex tasks are just part of daily routine, sir. Would you like to see some standard physical training exercises?" Before any of the aliens could respond, one of Amy's soldiers called out from across the platform, "Sergeant, the new equipment shipment needs to be moved to storage. The crane's down for maintenance." "No problem, Jackson," Amy called back. "Rodriguez squad, let's move that gear the old-fashioned way." The aliens watched in growing amazement as Amy and her 5-person team approached a pallet of equipment that had to weigh several tons. Without any mechanical assistance beyond their own muscles, the humans organized themselves around the load and began to lift. Veltar's suit sensors were going wild as he watched the display of raw physical strength. "This is impossible. The mass of that equipment exceeds what our calculations suggested your species could manipulate." "Standard load for a 6-person team." Amy grunted as she and her soldiers carried the massive pallet across the platform. "We train with heavier loads than this during combat preparation." Krieth's scanning device finally gave up completely, sparking and going dark in his trembling hands. The instrument, designed to function flawlessly in the gentle environment of the Zephyrian homeworld, simply could not handle the constant stress of Earth's gravitational field. "Our technology is failing," he announced with what sounded like genuine surprise. "Equipment that has functioned perfectly for decades is breaking down after mere hours of exposure to your planetary conditions." Amy set her portion of the load down and walked over to where Krieth stood staring at his broken scanner. "Mind if I take a look at that, sir?" She took the device from his hands, and the aliens watched in fascination as she examined it with practiced efficiency. Her movements were quick and sure, unencumbered by the mechanical assistance they needed just to remain standing. "Looks like the internal components shifted under gravitational stress," she diagnosed. "The housing wasn't designed to maintain alignment under constant downward force. Happens sometimes with off-world equipment." "You understand the failure mechanism," Morden said with obvious surprise. "But your species has no experience with Zephyrian technology." Amy shrugged, a gesture that looked casual but would have been impossible for the aliens in their current state. "Gravity affects everything the same way. Metal fatigue, component settling, joint stress. We design all our equipment to handle it from day one." To demonstrate her point, she pulled out her own scanner, a bulky human device that looked primitive compared to the elegant Zephyrian instrument. She tossed it casually into the air and caught it one-handed, the device landing with a solid thunk that would have shattered its alien equivalent. "Our gear gets dropped, thrown around, exposed to shock and vibration," she explained. "If it can't handle rough treatment under full gravity, it doesn't make it past testing." Veltar watched this demonstration with what might have been horror. "You deliberately subject your equipment to destructive forces as part of normal operation." "We call it field testing," Amy replied with a grin. "Everything we build has to work when it's been dropped, kicked, soaked, frozen, and generally beaten up. Because that's what happens to equipment in the real world." Dr. Chang led the group to an observation area where they could watch more of the base's daily operations. Through the reinforced windows, the aliens could see construction crews working on a new facility. Human workers moved massive steel beams into position, using nothing but their own strength and basic mechanical advantage tools. "The construction techniques are primitive but effective," Morden observed, his voice strained from the constant effort of standing upright. "Your people appear to be building structures designed to withstand enormous stresses. Standard earthquake and storm resistance requirements," Dr. Chang explained. "Everything we build has to survive natural disasters, equipment failures, and worst-case loading scenarios." Krieth attempted to lean against a support railing, but misjudged the force required. He pressed too hard and dented the metal barrier, which had been designed to handle normal human use, not the desperate clutching of beings unused to, supporting their own weight. "Even your barriers are built to withstand significant force," he noted with grudging admiration. Amy walked over to demonstrate proper use of the railing, gripping it firmly but casually. "This is rated to handle emergency evacuation loads. During disasters, people tend to grab onto things pretty hard." "Disasters," Veltar repeated the word as if it were foreign. "Your species plans for catastrophic failure as a normal part of existence. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst," Amy said, unconsciously echoing Ben Carter's words from days earlier. "Things break, people panic, equipment fails. If you don't plan for it, people die." The aliens spent the next hour watching human activities that would have been routine on any Earth facility, but looked like superhuman feats to beings struggling under alien gravity. Workers lifted, carried, and manipulated loads that exceeded Zephyrian strength even with mechanical assistance. Soldiers performed training exercises that looked like Olympic competitions to observers from a low-gravity world. As the day wore on, the aliens' environmental suits began showing signs of strain. Warning indicators appeared on their displays as power systems worked beyond designed limits to provide constant assistance. Servos that had run quietly began to emit grinding sounds, and support struts developed visible stress fractures. "Our equipment is failing faster than anticipated," Veltar admitted, his voice now clearly strained by the effort of simply existing under Earth's crushing gravitational field. "We may need to cut this visit shorter than planned." Amy looked at the struggling aliens with something approaching sympathy. "This is just normal gravity for us, sirs. Every human child learns to walk under these conditions before they're 2 years old." Veltar stared at her for a long moment, his luminous eyes reflecting a dawning realization that was transforming his entire understanding of humanity. "Every human child. You are telling us that your offspring routinely accomplish what our adult forms find nearly impossible." "That's right, sir," Amy confirmed. "And they do it without mechanical assistance or environmental suits." As if to emphasize her point, a group of human children ran past the observation window, playing some sort of game that involved jumping, running, and wrestling, under the same gravitational force that was slowly destroying advanced alien technology and crushing the spirits of beings who had considered themselves the pinnacle of galactic evolution. The sight of those children, moving with effortless grace under conditions that reduced highly advanced aliens to stumbling invalids, marked the moment when the Zephyrian delegation finally began to understand what they were really looking at when they observed humanity. The emergency evacuation alarm sounded across the Colorado Springs facility as Commander Veltar's environmental suit finally reached critical failure. Warning lights flashed red across his display systems, while mechanical support servos began shutting down one by one under the relentless stress of Earth's gravitational field. The suit that had been designed by the galaxy's most advanced civilization was being slowly crushed by the same force that human children played under every day. "We need to get them back to the shuttle immediately," Dr. Chang announced as she watched Krieth's suit develop visible cracks along the primary support joints. Their equipment wasn't designed for prolonged exposure to our gravity levels. Pilot Danny Foster was already running toward the landing platform, his movements quick and sure under conditions that had reduced the aliens to barely mobile invalids. Behind him, Sergeant Amy Rodriguez and her squad moved with practiced efficiency to assist the struggling. Delegation Veltar attempted to walk toward the shuttle but stumbled after 3 steps as his suit's leg servos failed completely. Amy caught him before he could fall, her human strength easily supporting the weight that his failing technology could no longer handle. The irony was not lost on any of them that the primitive humans were now physically carrying members of a species that had dismissed them as crude, heavy world creatures. The gravitational stress has exceeded all our equipment tolerances. Morden gasped as his own suit began emitting grinding sounds from overworked mechanical systems. "We severely underestimated the engineering challenges of your planetary environment." Dr. Chung helped guide Krieth toward the shuttle, noting how the alien's scanner had not just broken, but actually crumbled under forces that barely registered on human equipment. "Our environment shapes everything we build and everything we are. We've had millions of years to adapt." As they reached the shuttle, Veltar turned for one last look at the human facility. Construction workers were still moving massive steel beams with casual efficiency. Soldiers continued their training exercises without pause. Children played in a nearby recreation area, running and jumping with effortless grace that defied the crushing force trying to flatten everything on the planet's surface. "Every structure, every machine, every tool," he said slowly, his voice filled with new understanding. "Everything your species has ever created has been designed to function under forces that destroy our most advanced technology." The shuttle's engines struggled more than expected during takeoff, and Foster had to engage additional thruster systems to break free of Earth's gravitational well. The same force that had crushed alien equipment and overwhelmed alien physiology was now actively fighting their attempt to escape, requiring massive amounts of energy that Zephyrian vessels had never needed to generate. "This is incredible," Foster called from the cockpit as he pushed the engines to maximum output. "I've never had to use this much power just to achieve orbit. Your homeworld shuttle wasn't designed for this kind of gravitational resistance." As they climbed through Earth's atmosphere, the alien suits began functioning more normally, but the damage was already done. Support struts remained cracked, servos continued grinding, and power systems showed signs of permanent stress damage from their brief exposure to normal Earth conditions. "Our entire understanding of your species was fundamentally flawed," Veltar admitted as they reached orbital altitude and the crushing weight finally began to ease. "We viewed your technology as primitive because it appeared bulky and over-engineered. We failed to comprehend that every human creation must survive in an environment that would flatten our cities." Krieth was examining the remains of his scanning device, which had literally fallen apart under gravitational stress. "Our materials science, our engineering principles, our entire technological foundation assumes benign environmental conditions. Your people build everything as if expecting it to be attacked by the planet itself." "Because it is," Dr. Chang replied simply. "Every day, every hour, every second, Earth's gravity is trying to pull apart everything we've built. Every structure has to resist forces that would collapse anything not specifically designed to handle them." As they approached the orbital station, Morden stared down at Earth through the viewing port with completely transformed perspective. "Your children. We watched human offspring perform physical feats that adult members of our species cannot accomplish, even with mechanical assistance. Every human is forged by gravity from birth. Captain Morrison said as he welcomed them back aboard the station. Our bones grow dense under constant stress. Our muscles develop strength just to move our own bodies. Our cardiovascular systems work against forces that would overwhelm beings from gentler worlds. Veltar looked around the orbital station with new eyes, seeing for the first time the incredible engineering achievement it represented. Every structural beam, every joint, every system had been designed and built by beings who lived their entire lives under crushing gravitational stress. The station wasn't just human technology floating in space. It was the product of minds and bodies shaped by forces that would destroy Zephyrian civilization. "We must contact our High Council immediately," he said, his voice carrying new tones of respect and urgency. "Our entire assessment of humanity requires fundamental revision." The transmission to the Zephyrian homeworld took several hours to establish. But when the connection finally opened, the High Council's elegant forms filled the communication screen. They moved with the same flowing grace that had once made human observers feel clumsy and primitive. But now that grace looked fragile and delicate to eyes that had seen humans casually perform impossible feats of strength. "Commander Veltar," the council leader said in musical tones, "report on your assessment of the primitive heavy world species." Veltar straightened as much as his damaged suit would allow. "Honored Council, we must revise all previous classifications. The humans are not primitive. They are incredibly advanced beings whose every achievement has been accomplished under environmental conditions that would destroy our homeworld." "Explain," the council leader commanded, though confusion was evident in the harmonic undertones of the Zephyrian language. "Their planet generates gravitational forces 3 times stronger than our own." Veltar continued, "Every human structure, every piece of technology, every biological adaptation has been forged under stresses that exceeded our equipment tolerances within hours. Their children routinely accomplish physical tasks that our adults cannot perform with mechanical assistance." Krieth stepped forward, holding the remains of his scanner. "Our most advanced instruments simply disintegrated under their normal environmental conditions. Meanwhile, humans build technology that functions reliably for decades under the same forces that destroyed our equipment. What you call over-engineering is actually precise adaptation to hostile conditions." Morden added, "They do not build things stronger than necessary. They build things exactly as strong as their environment demands." The council leader was quiet for a long moment, the implications slowly sinking in. "You are suggesting that what we interpreted as technological primitiveness was actually sophisticated engineering for extreme conditions." "More than that," Veltar replied. "Every human who has ever lived has been constantly fighting gravitational forces that would crush our finest architecture. They are not heavy world primitives. They are beings of incredible strength and endurance, shaped by conditions we cannot survive." Captain Morrison stepped into view of the transmission. "Commander Veltar, we hope this experience has given your people new insight into humanity. We look forward to continuing diplomatic relations with the Zephyrian Empire." The council leader's luminous eyes fixed on Morrison with newfound respect. "Captain Morrison, the Zephyrian Empire wishes to formally request a strategic alliance with humanity. We believe your people's unique adaptations and engineering capabilities would be invaluable for operations in high-stress environments throughout the galaxy. We would be honored to discuss such an alliance," Morrison replied. As the transmission ended, Veltar turned to Dr. Chang with something approaching awe in his expression. "Doctor, we now understand that every casual human gesture represents strength that exceeds our physical capabilities. Every human tool is built to standards that surpass our most demanding specifications. Every human achievement has been accomplished against gravitational opposition that we cannot overcome." Dr. Chang smiled as she looked out at Earth, hanging beautiful and blue in the viewing port. "Commander, you've learned something that took our species millions of years to understand. The universe doesn't care how elegant or graceful you are. It only cares whether you're strong enough to survive what it throws at you." In the weeks that followed, the Zephyrian Empire's attitude toward humanity underwent complete transformation. Human engineers were recruited to design equipment for high-gravity operations. Human soldiers were requested to train Zephyrian forces for hostile environment deployment. Human construction techniques became the galactic standard for building in challenging conditions. And somewhere in the archives of both civilizations, the record would show that the mighty Zephyrian Empire's respect for humanity began the moment their advanced technology was crushed by the SE.